Today I've been very brave. For the very first time I'm cooking something which divides Italy into two. It's a recipe where Italians get very, very upset if you get it wrong, but also they seems to be getting very upset if you get it right. There seems to be a midway, and I think it's because it's one of those recipes that has evolved over the years. I'm going to be making something called a carbonara. Yes, a carbonara. And what triggered me wanting to do it was the fact that I was at the supermarket the other day, and in the meat aisle I saw this Italian spicy pancetta. Here, I'll show them to you. And it was love at first sight. And to make matters worse, then I saw this bag of fusilli bucati lunghi. Here, I'll show them to you. And fusilli are typical of carbonara or spaghetti or long pasta nowadays. I'll tell you a little bit about the history in a little while. But they got a little hole in the middle, and they are chunkier than normal spaghetti. So they look like spaghetti, but curled, and a hole in the middle. So I thought it'd be nice to try that. So what do you need to make a carbonara? A traditional carbonara. I've read a lot about it, so I'm about to share a lot with you. But very simply, it's one of those recipes that is incredibly easy to make also. So you're going to need some cured pork products such as pancetta, or bacon, or you can use also guanciale, which is the cheek of the pig. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a moment. Pepper. Pepper is a key ingredient for a good carbonara. Also cheese. You can use pecorino. In Rome they'll say to you that you have to use pecorino, otherwise it's not a carbonara. That's not the case, because actually it is in starch as pecorino, so you can use anything you like, but generally people will use grana padano or parmigiano or pecorino. This is parmigiano, by the way. I do not have any pecorino, but I would have used parmigiano even if I had pecorino, because in this case I think I prefer it. I'm cooking for 2 people, and I will be using a couple of eggs, and I will only be needing the yolk from the egg. And then obviously pasta, and that is pretty much it. Obviously water to cook the pasta and so on. So I'll get myself organized, and I'll show you how I make my version. So let's talk a little bit about the history, as there are a few stories around the origin of carbonara. Some of them go back to 1700s or 1800, but I'm not going to even mention them. One of them is about the coal miners adapting it to take it down in the mines when they were digging coal and so on. The most plausible explanation is down to actually the Second World War. A young chef called Renato Gualandi, he was cooking for the American troops. The Americans had liberated Rome from during the war from the Germans, and he was in charge of cooking. And he had access to bacon from the American troops, but also he had access to cheese and eggs. And the eggs actually that Mr. Gualandi was able to use back then were not the same eggs as we're using today. They were powder eggs, funny enough. And Mr. Gualandi actually has told this story himself, as he only died in 2016. So he was tasked to cook something which would fill the troops, but also that needed to be very, very tasty, so that it would lift the humour, and people would feel better about themselves. And he actually created the first carbonara, as it was called then. And he mixed the bacon with the eggs and cheese, and cooked some I think the actual pasta that he used at the time, it might have even been something short like macaroni. That is not something which I'm not altogether clear, but in the earlier version of the carbonara, short pasta was used, and macaroni was very, very popular. But later, in future versions, spaghetti and bucatine have become the norm. This pancetta, by the way, smells really nice. I'll just try a little, and I'll let you know what it's like. Oh, it's nice and spicy. I think if you... I just got a second kick. If you want to replicate it, you can use normal bacon, or if you can get hold of pancetta or guanciale, and you can rub some chili flakes, or if you've got some oil, like spicy oil, Calabrian oil maybe, That actually you could rub that on, and then you can use that also, but maybe the night before. Oh god, it's on the back of my throat. It's really strong, but really nice. So I've just sliced my pancetta and I've got it in little cubes, so anything between half a centimeter to a centimeter. Some are long, some are short. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure that Mr. Galbiati in 1944 didn't actually care, so neither do I. To make it slightly easier, I'll get everything ready first and then I'll do all of the cooking at once. So my pancetta is inside a pan. I'm not going to add any oil at the moment because this will release quite a lot of fat, and I'll put it on one side. Eggs next, and I'm going to use only the yolk, as this is a lot closer to the original recipe, but also it will make the finish considerably silkier. So I'll keep the white for something else, and a couple of egg yolks. By the way, I'm cooking for 2 people, so 2 egg yolks. Ironically, Mr. Gualandi at the time didn't actually have access to either pancetta or to guanciale. He had access to bacon, because that's what the American brought. And back then, actually, in Italy, bacon didn't really exist. So it's only because, just like anything else, food evolved and the styles and so on, that then Rome decided to make the recipe their own. And a lot of recipes in Rome actually use guanciale, and they decided to use guanciale. Likewise, or they decided to say that guanciale is what you used to use. Likewise, the same is with the cheese. In Rome, they use a lot of pecorino. Pecorino Romano is a very popular cheese. And they felt that using anything else would have not fitted the mold. So that's why if you talk to Romans, they will say that for a carbonara to be called a carbonara, you have to use pecorino. Now, I don't think it really matters, because if you think about the principle of the recipe was born out of need, and he used what he had, and the recipe has evolved over the years. So even what Romans called a carbonara today, it wasn't a carbonara back then. And that should be, because actually food evolves like everything else, and who is to say what is right and what is wrong? So I'm using pancetta instead of guanciale. And by the way, the difference is that pancetta, it comes from pancia, and pancia is the belly pork. And actually guanciale is the cheek. And if you think about bacon and pancetta, they are very, very similar, from a very similar area. Whereas actually guanciale is the cheek of the pork. And the difference being that it's a bit fattier, but also when you're cooking the guanciale, it goes crispier and a little bit softer on the inside, whereas bacon or indeed pancetta will be a little bit crispier. But the taste is the same. They both come from the same animal, from the pig. So I'm sure that from that point of view, you will not be far wrong if you use either. I try to think what the comments are going to be from all of the Romans who might be watching this video. Never mind, it doesn't really matter. Trend is the word I was struggling with earlier, and every recipe goes through trends, and this is no different. You might not know that back in the 70s and 80s in Italy, it became very popular to use cream, double cream with carbonara. Nowadays, if you make a carbonara and, well, if you make a pasta and you add cream and you call it a carbonara, you are absolutely detested and hated by most Italians. But back in the 70s and 80s was what they very much used to use. But nowadays it's the egg and the cheese that give you that level of creaminess that you're looking for. So I've just mixed some of my cheese and my egg yolks together, and I'll mix it together. I'm keeping some of the cheese for later, and I'll make sure that all of my cheese is absorbed by my egg yolk. And that's fine, don't worry that it looks a little bit dry. That is something which we can take care of it later. I told you it was simple, as I'm ready to cook. So my pancetta is on the hob. Temperature at the moment is medium-high. I'll turn it up a little. And this is going to be my very first dose of pepper, quite generous. Another reason why in Rome they decided to use guanciale is because of the higher content of fat, and that would melt relatively quickly and release a lot of oil. Mr. Gualandi didn't have guanciale, I think I said that already. And actually he used butter, which is what I'm going to be using today. And he would have used butter with his bacon. Just a little knob to help the bacon, to help the pancetta cook together. And I'm keeping the temperature on a medium high, and I don't want to burn my pancetta. It could easily burn, just like if you were cooking, say, bacon for breakfast. And gently I'll mix it together until my pancetta is totally cooked and it becomes beautiful and crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Oh, I'm so glad I waited to make this recipe and go hold of the spicy pancetta. It's so good, it's unbelievably tasty. Okay, as I mentioned, crackly on the outside and beautiful and tender on the inside. Before I forget, I will remove some and I'll reserve it for later, as I will be sprinkling this on top of my pasta once it's cooked. And I'll turn this off and I'll start cooking my pasta next. A little salt, not a lot, as the cheese is quite salty and also the pancetta is salty and spicy, so just enough for the pasta. So the long and the short is that there isn't really a traditional carbonara. People get really wound up about food, and carbonara is one of those topics. The important thing is to remember is that it's made of very simple ingredients. Just like Parmigiana, for example, if you're making a Parmigiana, you will have different variations, different regions will cook it different ways. This is not different. The important thing to remember is that there are only a few ingredients. Clearly pork in whatever shapes you like is one, eggs, cheese, and that is pretty much the heart and soul of the carbonara. Then if you're using the cheek, or if you're using bacon, if you're using anything else, it doesn't really matter. That was not the intention of the dish. It came out of necessity. Of course, if you are adding other ingredients, like for example peas or mushrooms, you are deviating from the soul of the dish, so you cannot really call it a carbonara anymore. You can if you want, it's entirely up to you. And that is where people get very often wound up. And like for example Mr. Gordon Ramsay, I saw a video he did during COVID, a nice video actually, where he cooked with his daughter, and I think they just used an iPhone, and he called something a carbonara, and he threw everything under the sun in it. And I think he did that very much to wind up the Italians, and he was very successful, because if you look at the video, the amount of stick that he received from Italians is unbelievable, and I don't think it's necessary. So you don't have to agree with me, but if you do disagree, please let me know and put it in the comments, but be nice about it. I'll be nice to you. In the meantime, whilst the pasta is cooking and it's already releasing some starches, I'm going to pinch 4 teaspoons of hot water, and I'll put it here and I'll mix it together so that my little mixture of eggs and cheese start melting together. I just add one more. This will make it easier for me when it needs to come out and be added to the pasta later. So my pancetta is back on temperature medium-low for the moment, and my pasta should be hard to bite, and the Italian word is al dente, and it is. So straight away I'll turn it off and I'll start moving it in with my pancetta. And as I move it across, I'm carrying a little bit of water. And I mix it together, and if you look at the bottom, can you see it's got a beautiful layer of fat and butter from earlier? This is what is going to give my carbonara a beautiful flavor. But before I continue, I'm going to get a little of my water, and add it in. And this is a very important step to get a good carbonara. Remove it from the heat, and I'm going to add now my mixture of egg and cheese together. Second dose of pepper goes in, and before I return it to the heat, I'll mix it together to ensure that my egg and cheese is properly mixed with the pasta. And this will give me an immediate foundation at the bottom. Can you see already I'm getting this beautiful cream? So I'll turn the heat up and I'll move back to the hob. Again, temperature medium-high, and the sole purpose here is to pasteurize the egg. So no more than really 10 seconds, otherwise you'll end up making an omelette. And that is definitely what you don't want. So that's it, it's time to come off. And I'm ready to serve. If you look, can you see it got a beautiful little creamy sauce at the bottom? It's perfect. I think if Mr. Gualandi was able to see this video, he would be very proud of this version of carbonara. It smells really good. Also, you might have noticed that the color is a little bit deeper and readier than the normal carbonara. That is obviously because the spicy pancetta carries more of a deeper color, which is perfectly okay. So I've done a portion here, and I'm going back to my sauce, and you should have plenty of this left. If you don't, make sure that you add a little bit more water as you're cooking it, but make sure also that you don't end up swimming in it. So I'm just gonna put some on top of it, and also I'll make sure that I carry some of my pancetta. And as I said, also you can use, of course, any type of pasta. Spaghetti is very common nowadays in Italy with carbonara. And one more, a lot of pepper, I said to you before, very, very important. So that goes at the very, very top. Also, I reserved a little bit of my Parmigiano earlier, so I'll sprinkle just a little on the top to give it a little color. And also I reserved a little bit of my cooked pancetta just to give you a little bit extra color. So I'll put some on the top like this, but also I'll go on the sides. This is a Francesco cosmetic addition to the dish, just to give it a little bit of a signature. And it is ready. And what I'll do, I'll leave that for my photo, but I'll taste some from here and I'll let you know what it's like. It should be enough. Oh, it's delicious. I'm not just saying, but it's one of the best carbonaras I've ever made. Ooh, spicy, and the taste and the depth of the pancetta is unique, cooked obviously like this. As I said to you before, make variations, it doesn't really matter, as long as it is delicious and it is what you want. Thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think, and if you've made it before or if you're going to make it. Ciao ciao, bye bye, see you later.